Listen, man, Sean G here, Legwell Insurance Group. I need you to go on that website right now, Legwell Insurance Group, and follow them on Instagram at Legwell Insurance. That's my man, Dr. Dice. You could get you some term life insurance, whole life, fixed annuity, get you some life insurance, man, so that your people won't have to struggle and won't suffer, when it comes time for you to get up out of here, because one day it's going to be my turn, one day it's going to be your turn. But get you some life insurance. Tell them Sean G sent you. Legwell Life Insurance Group. These are some good people. I've partnered with them. Take care of your people, man. Whole life, term life, fixed annuity, all kind of life insurance. Legwell Life Insurance. Peace. Yo, what's up? Good morning, man. July the 30th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast for Soul. You can follow me on all platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, the podcast for Soul. Today I want to talk about the Puffy trial, but in talking about this Puffy trial, I don't want to slander, libel, or defame anybody as it relates to this case. I will be coming straight from the court paperwork. This is a 12-page document filed by Puffy's lawyers in order to get him released on bail. One of the cases that they cite in that letter motion in order to get Puffy some bail is a case in the Western District of New York where they talk about the Mann Act. As you know, Puffy's been sitting in Metropolitan Detention Center, Brooklyn, MDC, Brooklyn, since about September 23rd, 2024, so almost 1 year. And Puffy was acquitted of two very serious charges: RICO, racketeering conspiracy, which carried a life without the possibility of parole sentence. They offered Puffy a 30-year plea deal. Take this 30 years and don't go to trial, and maybe you'll live to be 81 and get out maybe when you're 77. Or if you go to trial and lose, we're going to give you life without the possibility of parole. You will die in prison. Puffy chose to go to trial. He went to trial. He beat the feds at trial in New York City, in the Southern District of New York, and he did not call not one witness. He used every single witness of the prosecution and a jury of his peers, 12 members, 12 citizens from the city of New York, found him not guilty of the racketeering conspiracy and the SEX trafficking, which both of those charges would have triggered an asset forfeiture clause. He would have lost all of his businesses. They would have taxed all of his financial resources, all of his houses, money, catalog, everything. His family would have been destitute. Puffy beat him at trial. He was convicted on two lesser charges, which are questionable, and they are the Mann Act. Now, the Mann Act is the root law that the Mann Act springs from is the White Slave Traffic Act. I think that's what it's called, the White Slave Traffic Act. But what the Mann Act is it in order, White Slave Traffic Act, the Department of Justice has put out directives, manuals, memos, put the word out that the Mann Act should only be applied to cases where the defendant was making money off of the transport, the interstate transport of women and girls. only making money, financial gain, financial profit. That is the only time that the Mann Act should be used. This is from the Department of Justice, the highest law body in the United States. That's what they said. In Puffy's case, Puffy was not making money from transporting Jane Doe and Cassie across state lines. Actually, what they were doing is they were flying in male escorts for Jane and Cassie. Puffy was not even having sex with these dudes. So the women, Cassie and Jane, who, as we found out at the trial, were volunteers, were willing participants, and Jane even herself reached out to these porn stars and invited them over to join her and Puffy in threesomes. This is the swingers lifestyle. Jane Doe initiated that. Cassie, on the other hand, had relationships with one guy who's been making his way around the social media spectrum. She was involved with him for 7 to 8 years, calling him, making him leave his girlfriend to come and have sex with her while Puffy watched. So in this Puffy case, he's being held without bail, and he doesn't even meet not only does it not meet the threshold of making a profit or being in the business of prostitution, that is number one. And then number two, he is not even engaging in the sexual experience with the male escort. His girlfriends are. So the question is, like, Cassie is free, Jane Doe is free, all of the male escorts are free. The business where they used to order these male escorts from, the business is still up and running. The owner is free. Everybody is free. The material participants who are actually engaging in the transaction, all of them are free except Puff. So this is a red flag. Two hurdles that Puffy does not meet in order for him to be convicted under the Mann Act is there. So that is why I am calling for him to get bail. He should have been out, without a doubt. He should have been out. But I want to talk about one particular case that's called Tills and Trowbridge. Trowbridge. Tills, Trowbridge, Trowbridge. This was a case that's in the Second Circuit in the Western District of New York. All right, this is a case where there's a police officer, Tills, and a state judge, Trowbridge, who are a part of this fraternal group called the Jesters, and they hire girls to come to a date and time, a location, and have sex with not only them, Tills and Trowbridge, but other dudes and other members of the Jesters. They hire them to do that. They get busted. Check my coffee out. That cup is not that good. They hire these girls, they get busted, and come to find out, they hired these girls from some people who were trafficking these girls, okay? So these girls were being trafficked, they hired them. Both Tills and both Trowbridge engaged in an intercourse act with the girls. So did the dudes they hired them for. And they got busted. And they were charged and found guilty, pled guilty under the Mann Act. Okay? Here again, Tills and Trowbridge were not in the business of making a profit, right? They engaged in the intercourse act with these girls and facilitated the act with these other dudes. Now, what got them jammed up was the fact that these girls were being trafficked through another organization. That's what got them jammed up. Tills, the cop, he only got probation. The judge got sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. But after he pled guilty, before and after Tills pled guilty, before and after Trowbridge pled guilty, they were both released on bail. They both got bail, charged with the Mann Act, the same charge as Puff. Even after Trowbridge pled guilty, and even after Tills pled guilty, awaiting sentencing, they were allowed to remain free on bail. So this is a case that's probably most similar to Puffy's case, yet Puffy is not released on bail. Let's go through it. This is a 12-page document, page number 7. This is the letter from Mark Agnifilo to Judge Submaranian, case number 1:24, CR 00542, July 29th, 2025, document 483. Of the district courts within the Second Circuit, the only case located to date by the defense where a John, quote unquote John, a John is the dude that goes out and pays for sex with a prostitute. And that's what Puffy's attorneys liken him to. They're saying Puffy was just a John. He was paying for this event, not for him, but for his girlfriends. The only case located to date by the defense where a John was prosecuted under the Mann Act in an adult prostitution case was from the Western District of New York in the case of United States versus Trowbridge, where the defendant, a retired police officer who, along with a former New York State judge, Tills, okay, so I had it wrong. Trowbridge is the cop, Tills is the judge, and others hired women who they paid to have sex with members of a male fraternal group called the Justice. Although Tills and Trowbridge apparently made no financial profit and were merely having sex with the prostitutes and arranging for others to have sex with them, unlike the male escorts in Puffy's case, the female prostitutes being patronized by the defendants were clearly victims of sex trafficking. So these prostitutes that Tills and Trowbridge used and paid were victims of sex trafficking. The male escorts in Puffy's case are not being sex trafficked. They're doing this under their own volition. The victims, meaning the prostitutes, were vulnerable and exploited by the traffickers. They had been tricked into working for a brothel by the owner, who had told them they would be providing, quote unquote, normal massages rather than sexual services. So the business owner who owned the brothel, who tricked these girls and was trafficking these girls, told them, you're not going to be doing sex, you're just going to be giving massages. Indeed, the owner pled guilty to sex trafficking and admitted to preying upon financial and ethnic vulnerabilities and immigration status, and using her relationships with public officials, including the cop and the judge, to coerce the women to engage in commercial sex acts for her business. So this was a female. She was a madam, and she got busted. She pled guilty to sex trafficking, and she admitted that these girls were immigrants. They didn't have any money, and based on their ethnicity, she used that to force and coerce them into doing sex for money, when in fact she told them all they would be doing would be massages. The police officer defendant, Trowbridge, was sentenced to probation. The retired judge, Tills, who arranged the prostitution activities for the justice, which Puffy didn't do, Jane Doe. Puffy did sometimes. Puffy, Jane Doe, and Cassie, they all arranged at different points throughout their relationship for the male escorts to come. The retired judge, Tills, who arranged the prostitution activities for the justice, was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Although they did not make a profit, the Trowbridge defendant, unlike Mr. Combs, were taking advantage of trafficking victims, and they all had sex with the prostitutes. Puffy didn't have any sex with the male escorts. These two guys did. Notably, Trowbridge, the judge, is Trowbridge the judge or the cop? Trowbridge is the judge. No, Trowbridge is the cop. Notably, Trowbridge, the cop, was released on his own recognizance after his plea of guilty, pending sentencing to the same offenses that Puffy was convicted of here. So, the cop, Trowbridge, pled guilty to the Mann Act, but was given bail, didn't have to put up no money, no property. He was released on his own recognizance and was set free until he got sentenced. Tills, the judge, similarly pled to the same offense, and he too was also released on his own recognizance and was given a voluntary surrender date after his sentencing, despite being sentenced to prison time. So both of these guys pled guilty, and while they were awaiting sentencing, they were given bail on their own recognizance. Didn't have to put up no money, no property, no nothing. Trowbridge pled guilty, was sentenced to prison, and was still allowed to go home until he got his date that he needed to self-surrender in prison. So these are the precedent cases that Puffy's legal team has sent in this letter to the judge. This should guarantee Puffy's release in the next few days. The judge has given the prosecution until tomorrow, Thursday, July 31st, to respond to this letter from Puffy's attorneys. Let's see what happens. Peace.